Hello and welcome back to the course on blockchain. And today we've got a very interesting topic, Bitcoin's monetary policy. Just as central banks of governments have their own monetary policies, being a financial system of its own kind, Bitcoin also has a monetary policy. So let's have a look. Bitcoin's monetary policy consists of two main parts, a principle called the halving and block frequency. And we'll have a look at both of them. So the halving, what is it all about? Well, what this principle states is that the number of Bitcoins released into the system is halved every single 4 years. So it's actually not just 4 years, it's 210,000 blocks. So you can see here that every 210,000 blocks, the number of Bitcoins per block is reduced by 2. So by like twice, by 2x. So at the start it was 50 Bitcoins per block. From 2012, from November 2012, it became 25 Bitcoins per block. But and you can see that happened at block number 210,000. At block number 420,000, it was reduced to 12.5 Bitcoins per block. Around 2020, it'll be 6.25 Bitcoins per block, and 2024 it'll be 3.125, and it'll continue having every 210,000 blocks about every 4 years. And the important thing to note here is that the monetary policy of Bitcoin is entirely controlled by its software. It's entirely under the control of the algorithm that is in Bitcoin. It's not somebody going out there and saying, okay, we're going to change the number of Bitcoins released this year to this amount. No, it's just all pre-programmed into the software. It's done like that. And as we'll see further down, actually, in the tutorial about the understanding mining difficulty, we'll have a discussion about how this is actually very effective, how effective the Bitcoin policy is, how it's able to keep things under control, inflation under control, things like that. So we'll talk a little bit about it today, and we'll talk more about it later on. So this is the halving principle. That basically controls, as we know, Bitcoins are released with every block. Every single time there's a block created, Bitcoins are released. Well, this controls the quantity of Bitcoins being released. And if we chart it out, you will see that Bitcoins, this is the halving principle in blue. So on the right is the block reward, and you can see that it drops from 50 Bitcoins to 25 to 12.5, and it'll keep reducing like that until like approximating to 0. Then on the other hand, you have the number of Bitcoins, the supply. So you can see how many Bitcoins are going into the system. So there's 210, 420. So every square here is about 4 years, if you think of it that way. You can see that the number of Bitcoins is increasing, and because of the halving principle, so if you take 50 plus 25 plus 12.5 plus and so on, and of course you multiply it by the number of blocks inside this period of 4 years. But in general, you see, because it's halving, it approximates. So it's basically an exponential chart as well, and it has an asymptotic value. So it will not just keep increasing forever. It will converge to a certain amount, and in fact, simply because there is a limitation in the accuracy of how much you can divide a single Bitcoin by, because of that limitation, the final Bitcoins that will be released as a block reward ever will happen in 2140 at 21 million. So theoretically, it could keep halving until infinity, but because there is a certain number of decimal points after the comma or after the decimal that a Bitcoin can handle, the final block will be the final block reward, the final Bitcoins released for in the system in this manner will be in 2140, and the total number of Bitcoins in circulation ever will be 21 million Bitcoins. And and so there's actually an interesting chart. Let me have a look what we want to talk about next. Oh, actually, first I wanted to mention this. This is a different chart. So here you can see the same yellow line is also how many, oh no, the red line is the block reward. As you can see, it's been halved every 4 years, it's going down. But this yellow chart now doesn't represent the total number of Bitcoins in circulation. It is the transaction fees, because from here you might ask the question, well, if miners are getting less and less and less reward with time, after some time, once it gets like below 1 Bitcoin per mined block, what's the point of mining? Won't the whole system collapse? Well, the hopes are that it won't collapse, because the fees should increase, because as time passes, more and more people will adopt Bitcoin, and more people will be using Bitcoin, and therefore more transactions will be required to be processed, and therefore miners will be getting more fees, and people will be paying higher fees for their transactions to go through, because there will be more demand for transactions to go through. Basically, there's a limit to how many transactions can go through, and it'll be a competitive market. So if you want your transaction to go through, you'll pay more fees, and therefore the fees will go up, and miners will be compensated. They're already compensated not just by the block reward, they're also getting the fees, but because the fees will go up, that will compensate for the fact that the block reward has gone down. And so it is hoped that the total mining incentive will stay here, but this yellow line is totally up to how the market plays out, how this whole system plays out, and the adoption rate of Bitcoin. And the other thing I wanted to show you is this chart over here, where we've got Bitcoin monetary inflation. So once again, this blue line, this time it's once again the total number of Bitcoins in circulation. So it's not the fees, it's the Bitcoins in circulation. We're back to that. And this line that drops off over here is the inflation. And inflation is basically, there's a formula for inflation here, Coinbase. That's how much money is being released. So that's the amount, 50, 25, 12.5 times blocks per year divided by existing coins. But in essence, what inflation, as we know, is like how prices increase in a certain currency. Like if a bottle of milk was $1, then it becomes $2. That's because of inflation. Well, in Bitcoin, actually, what you see is over time there's deflation. This factor is decreasing, and that's because the monetary supply is limited, and it's the less and less blocks are being released into the system. So Bitcoin is a deflationary type of currency. Very interesting. Okay, so the halving principle, and now let's talk about block frequency. So block frequency is how often do those blocks come in that bring the reward, which is right now 12.5 Bitcoins per block. How often do they come in? Well, depending on the cryptocurrency, they are different. For instance, in Bitcoin, it's 10 every 10 minutes. In Ethereum, it's every 15 seconds. In Ripple, it's every 3.5 seconds. In Litecoin, it's every 2.5 minutes. So it really depends on the design of the system. And now let's have a look at an example. Let's have a look at this live example. So this is a website that we're going to be going to very often. It's called blockchain.com or blockchain.info. I think it's the same website. As you'll see, we'll just jump over to that one now. So if I go to data here at the top, you see it's blockchain.info now, and we'll be dealing with data, charts, stats. Those are going to be our predominant tabs that we're going to go into. And this is where you can find all of the information on blockchain. You can see the latest blocks, that the latest block was mined 5 minutes ago, the one before that 22 minutes ago, 25, and so on, 28. You have some stats. Very, very useful site. Lots of wonderful information here. So I highly recommend checking it out and just browsing through it in your own time. And plus, we'll definitely learn a lot of things from here during at least this module of the course. And so now if we go to here, see more, and we'll see the most recent blocks, you can see the time when they were mined. You can see this one was mined at 0203, this one 146. So what's the difference in time here? It's 17 minutes. So here it's 3 minutes. Here it's another 3 minutes. Here it's 11 minutes. Here it's 11 minutes as well. So if you take these times and you take the average, because again it's a cryptographic puzzle, it's statistical. So basically it can vary, it can fluctuate up and down, but if you take the average, it should work out to be 10 minutes. And we'll see exactly how this is controlled in the system further down in this module of the course, so you'll understand, we'll discover together why it's actually 10 minutes, how that is maintained. And so, yeah, you can click on any block and you can explore it if you like. And that brings us to the end of this today's tutorial. I wanted to suggest an interesting article if you'd like to do some additional reading. I found this interesting article by Mark Jeftovich, and it's called This Time is Different Part 2, What Bitcoin Really Is. And it's actually about, how long is it? 15 minutes read, so it's longer than average. But it's about what we talked about: inflation, deflation, monetary policy, and like for example here we've got what is this? Monetary base in billions of dollars. How many billions of dollars there are there in circulation, as far as I understand. But you can see, like here, he's advocating that central banks can just do whatever they want. They can release money whenever they like. But in Bitcoin, it's all part of the system, part of a very, very smart system, very well thought through system. So very interesting article, lots of thought-provoking ideas here that will contrast cryptocurrencies to normal fiat currencies, and I highly recommend checking it out for an interesting read. And on that note, hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, enjoy blockchains.